Great to have an NGO representative on the board. Thank you. Okay, and just to end off our presentation for the afternoon, one of the things that we also wanted to submit before the Standing Committee is to really, we urge the Standing Committee to look at the short and long-term implications of this particular bill, especially in the light of the current government's ongoing discussions with ILO. And as a feminist and human rights organization, with FWRM, so has the women's movement and other human rights organizations, have consistently advocated for human rights in Fiji. We believe that the commitment by the Fiji government to international norms and obligations that are enforceable between states, specifically looking at international bodies such as the United Nations and the ILO, it only further strengthens and enforces existing domestic protections that are available to our citizens. And we, it's quite welcome that this particular process is occurring. We feel and also urge the Standing Committee that when you're re-looking at the bill, to ensure that these international human rights standards are maintained, because it only further contributes to a culture of human rights in Fiji. And every time we make a commitment regionally, nationally, or internationally, it really just gives and strengthens our own commitment to uphold human rights at home. And we feel that by doing this can only benefit women, and when it benefits women, it actually benefits everybody. And we thank the Standing Committee for your time and for taking into account the Fiji Women's Rights Movement submission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Veena and Michelle, for your presentation this afternoon to the committee. We certainly appreciate your submission. As I said earlier this morning, we have heard from various representatives all of this week. We have heard from the employers, we have heard from the employees, representatives, unions, we have heard from the ILO expert, we have heard from Mr. John Upton, a lawyer who deals both with the unions and the employees. And we have now heard from the rights movement, which is the women's rights movement. And I believe your slogan is women's rights is human rights. And rest assured that the government is committed to implement the best international practice of human rights and of legislation, workplace practices that has been recognized by International Labour Organization. We have heard from the expert, and I myself am part of the ICPEU team, and I heard how they deal with international best practices, and we are striving towards achieving the international best practice so that Fiji has been very highly regarded in our region by ICPEU members and all the other parts of the world, and we certainly like to improve their standing. And we thank you for your presentation today and enlightening us on the other aspects of the presentation. I will now request if any of my members have any questions for both of you. If there's any questions, I can ask you now. No moments. Number 6, you have any question? No questions. I will probably just ask a general question. This is nothing to do with the presentation that you made today, but the effect of the rights of workers to strike. You might have heard about the incident which I quoted earlier. The case that comes to my mind is the 1975-1977 period in India, where the emergency, then Prime Minister of India, Indira Gandhi, imposed emergency. Just before that period of emergency, 2.5 year period of emergency, there were a lot of strikes and industrial action that almost crippled the industries in India. And straight after that period, again the same problem. But during that 2.5 year period, with the restriction of strikes, restriction of industrial action, the economy did improve. And workers' rights to strike is generally is a basic labor right, and we appreciate that. But do you think that if strikes workers' rights or striking is made easier, will that somehow affect our economy, our industries, knowing that Fiji is a very small economy and it does require everybody to come to work every day? What's your views again?
Mr. Chair, can I just clarify your question? Are you saying that if it's easier to curtail workers' rights to strike,
if it's easier for workers to go on strike,
and if that would
affect the economy?
Yeah. For us as a human rights organization, we believe that human rights are all interlinked, they're indivisible. So one right is just as important as the other right. So if you take away one right, it limits a person's ability to fulfill or fully realize other rights. I think that in terms of, the question is, if we make it easier for workers to go on strike, would it affect the economy? I think there's several factors that needs to be taken into account. One is, what is the current procedures to then allow a worker to go on strike? There are other avenues, for example, mediation and conciliation, that must be exhausted first before we get to that point. So my answer would then be, no, I don't think that we should just take it as a simple yes or no sort of scenario. We really need to take into account all the other elements that are in play.
The legislation should have enough provisions and structure to make strike really a last option. Because no worker wants to just put the tools down because he feels like it's a last resort, they only take it when everything else has failed. So his suggestion is that we have enough provisions in the law that basically screens it and gives them an opportunity to be heard, mediate, and only strike as a last resort.
Yes, I believe so. And I also think that apart from having, you can have really great legislations, but if you don't have the political will to have those structures actually be resourced, do we have the people there with the right skill set? Do we have enough a space that a particular structure can work? Then the law will remain a black and white document. I think that also with the law there needs to be sufficient resources and political will to ensure that those mechanisms are actually alive and are thriving, but also allows both the employers and the workers and even the government to be able to look back and review, is this mechanism really working for us? Is there potential to perhaps include something new that fast tracks or maybe improves the way that we deal with disputes and grievances?
I appreciate that answer. That's something else I was looking for. Thank you very much. Once again, thank you, both of you, for being today and giving us your submission. If there's any other additions you wish to make, you can hand in a written amendment to submission to the Secretariat. And with that, knowing that we have tea ready, afternoon tea is ready. You can join us, the committee members, for afternoon tea.
Thank you very much.
Unless you are concerned about dieting. Thank you very much.